Hi, welcome back to Plan V Works, and today we are making last minute Thanksgiving cards because Thanksgiving is only 2 days away, and I realized I just needed to make a few more to give out to my friends who live nearby. And I wanted it to have all the fall colors and fall elements as well, and this is what I came up with, which I really love. So let's begin with our materials. Our card base is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I trimmed down my card panel to 3 3/4 and by 4 1/2 here. And I'll be using these Recollections cardstock as well. They have a very nice texture on top, and they come in a range of colors. This was on sale when I got it, so this is a really good find, and I love all of their cardstocks. Now, I also have the September 2021 Hero Arts Make Yourself at Home Card Kit Stamp and Die Cut set and the scrapbook.com stamp set. I'm going to use that word happy right there. I had this a while back and started making a lot of cards with them, but today we're going to use these again because I need a few more. I'm also going to use this warm cocoa dye ink from Gina K Designs. This is such a beautiful color. I love it. And I'm also going to use my Hero Hues pigment ink that came with a kit and the embossing powder that came with it as well. That's the Make Yourself at Home card kit from September 2021 from Hero Arts. And I'm also going to use my glue here or my tape runner or glue runner, whichever one you're comfortable with. And I'm going to show you why we need both or one of those. Now, after we've chosen our colors from our Recollections cardstock set, the next thing we're going to do is cut them into strips. What I would do to make this faster is cut 4 cardstocks at the same time, and it gave this beautiful like range of colors, and it's all about a centimeter thick. Now you could use your glue to stick them all out in our panel side by side. And the good thing about that is you have a little bit of wiggle room when you're working on it. If it's not straight or there's a gaps in between, then you have a little bit of wiggle room to move it around a little bit. And that's always great. And when they dry up, it covers the whole thing. And because you have a strong card panel in the back, then it doesn't warp as bad when you heat it up because it's all stuck together. Now, the only problem with this technique is, or with this process, is that it takes a little bit longer because now you have to put glue on the back of each one, just like this, and make sure that the glue is well spread out on each strip and that you have to stick them a little more slowly. And, it takes time, but if that's what we have, that's what we're going to work with. But like I said, it has its pros and cons as well. Now, I'm going to show you the other one. This is how I did it the first time. And I'm going to show you the other method that we'll use. Now, what I did here is run my tape runner all the way down on my card panels in threes or in fours. And now I will stick my cardstock strips down to the panel directly without having to put glue on the back of it individually. And this might seem faster, and in fact, this is how I did it for the rest of the cards because it does make it a little bit easier for the work. However, the problem with this process is because the tape runner is, or the glue is already on the card panel. Once you stick the cardstock strips, it's harder to adjust them. If there's a little bit of gap in between the strips, it's harder to take them out and replace them. Sometimes I even ruin some of my card strips. And that is the difficult thing because there's a certain permanence to it. Although you can move them, you can take them out. There was a couple of times when I was able to do that, but it wasn't always successful. So it all depends on how well you stick them and how many runs of glue you put in. But you do this just same thing you did with the glue before. With a liquid glue, you just stick them all side by side, one after the other. And you can create your color pattern here to make sure you have a good range of colors present, just like this one. Now the next thing I did was trim the edges to make sure that there are no excesses, and I ended up with 3 by 3/4 by 4 1/2 card panel, and I stuck it down to my card base. And now this is the fun part because once it's stuck on the card base, it looks so beautiful. The colors have started to pop out, and you've created this really cool fall themed background. And so now we are ready for the next element of our card, and that is our fall wreath. Now I'm putting in my anti-static powder here because we are going to stamp and pour in our embossing powder later on. And what I love about wreaths is that they're just so versatile. You can use them as a spring wreath or a fall wreath or Christmas wreath. These wreath images are just lovely to use for any card. Now, for this, I will be using my Hero Hues pigment. It's in ruby, and I'm using this color instead of the clear one because this is a very intricate image with lots of leaves and details in them. So if I miss out on any spot, it will not come out as obvious because the ink that we've used to stamp it is brown as well. Now I'm also using a darker embossing powder here, which makes it a really good match together because it intensifies the color a little bit more than just using a clear one. Now that we have our image nicely stamped, the next step would be to pour in our embossing powder. And we are using the same embossing powder from Hero Arts that came with our kit. And just slowly pouring it out, making sure that it is well covered every bit. Now that we've gotten rid of all the excesses, it's time to heat set our image. And like I said, this is my favorite part, to see the powder turn into this beautiful shiny image. Look at that. And I always like adding a little bit of shine to all my cards because it just makes me smile. And now we're ready to run it on our die cutting machine. And once we've done that, you have this perfect little wreath that you can now add to your card. And what's wonderful about this set that I got from Hero Arts is it has a die that corresponds to each stamp that it came with the little details. And look how shiny that is. It's so beautiful, and I feel that it will complement our background so beautifully. And that shine just adds a little bit more extra than just stamping it. But before we proceed with the next step, we're going to stamp in our happy sentiment in the middle. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to use my Hero Hues Ruby pigment as well and stamp it down again and use my embossing powder and heat set that once it's done. Now, if you use the tape runner method, you'll see that after heat embossing your image there, the cardstock will warp a little bit. But don't worry, because if you flatten it out, the next day it's actually going to be really flat. And now it's time to put our foam tape on our wreath image here, the back of it, just to give it a little bit more dimension. And like I always say, this is the most tedious part of the process, and putting it all in the back right there. But once it's all done and ready, it just creates this beautiful effect as well. I love how the dimension creates a great effect in creating the shadows in a card, and that always makes the focal element, which is the wreath, pop a little bit more. And next, we're going to create our final element, and that is the word Thanksgiving banner. And we're just going to be using our Gina K premium dye ink here in warm cocoa. Now, I recently got my Gina K dye inks, and I am just absolutely loving them. Now, this one, every time I use it, it seems to have like this little ombre effect, which is wonderful. I think it's just the manner of how I stamp it or the manner of how I ink my stamp here. But either way, I love that it has that subtle effect. It's like warm and dark brown all at the same time. And once you've done that, all you need to do next is just trim that banner to size, however you would want it. For this particular one, I just made sure that it was within the circumference of my wreath because I don't want it to overpower the whole wreath because it is a thick sentiment. Look at that, that's almost an inch there. And I didn't want it to take any more of the elements or the colors behind it. In fact, I trimmed it a little bit, I think, in this video. So now I am just putting it in the same dimension as the wreath here, putting in a little bit more foam tape and making sure that it's nice and center. And just like that, we have our final card. Now I love how beautiful it turned out. These fall colors, I'm just in love with them. And this wreath, again, the details is just so beautiful once it's all shiny. I hope that this was helpful in creating last minute cards for all of you, and I hope that you have a great Thanksgiving ahead. If you were inspired or enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to Plan V Works for more affordable crafting, resourceful hacks, and easy techniques. We'll see you guys again next time, and have a great day.